No, there is a new kind of disease which one is coming across now in institutes of higher learning and in the universities. This is a strange disease called anti-nationalism. Now, this disease, in order to be diagnosed for this disease, you do not need a doctor, you don't need a stethoscope, you don't need any pathology. All you need is a local unit of the ABVP. They have become the divining rod for figuring out where anti-nationalism exists. And they can bring it out where nobody had seen it before. And we have seen the pattern that their diagnosis follows is very simple. You first have the ABVP either recording a video or sending a complaint or something of this nature to the university authorities and to the local police, saying that there are anti-nationals in our institution. The next thing is that since this doesn't normally let the issue take off enough, it may be handled at the local level and then it's dropped. Then they move to a local MLA or MP of the Bharatiya Janata Party. And then that MLA or MP writes a letter both to the university and to the MHRD ministry, saying that we have discovered yet another case of anti-nationalism, and before the entire body politic is destroyed with this anti-nationalism, we must root out this cancer. Now, when this happens, not only does the university begin to move or feel pressured to move, but the MHRD immediately leaps into the situation with a lot of energy. And suddenly we find that the anti-nationals are extremists, casteist, divisive, and generally tearing the nation apart. Now, this kind of designation of invariably students or people who have organized a particular event, this happened in FTII, it happened in when Gajendra Chauhan was appointed. Then when the students opposed it, that became the anti-national event. In the Hyderabad University, when these boys organized in support of Yaqub Memon, they became anti-national. What is, of course, very interesting is that when Memon was actually to be hanged, you had almost half your top lawyers and solicitor generals and so on, and people who had actually held positions in governments as officers of the law. You had them waiting outside the Supreme Court in the morning, early morning, because the Supreme Court itself took up the case after midnight. So were they all anti-national? We don't know. But Rohit Vemula was anti-national. Now, once action has been taken against them, the media, of course, then is all there supportive to say that these people are anti-nationals. And everyone drops terms accused of being supposedly, allegedly, all those terms are dropped. They are simply called anti-national until people who watch television have it sort of instilled in their brains that here, these characters, these students in these universities are misusing public funds by doing anti-national activities instead of doing their studies. You see, there are two things that are being done here, which I think is very important to notice, and which actually Rohit's suicide note brought out very clearly. There is a conception of education which does not conform to any idea of real learning. There is a conception of education as suited to, as accommodated to, as adjusted to the marketplace and market requirements. So Students are not supposed to think. Students are not supposed to engage in critical activity. Students are not supposed to be worrying about what's happening in their country. They're only supposed to be worrying about what grades they're getting, how quickly they're getting them, and what jobs they can get after that. So this is the first thing. I thought Rohit's suicide note was one of the most beautiful pieces that I read. It was, of course, very poignant. But the sheer beauty of a young man who understood that despite his struggle to come to higher education, what he really wanted to get out of higher education, that is the development of his own mind. What Sarvapalli Radhakrishnan had said in the 1948 report on higher education, he said that higher education is above all self-development, and therefore you cannot have too much autonomy for people who are thinking of self-development. There is no self-development without autonomy. I heard that idea being articulated again in Rohit's suicide note, where he said, I didn't want to become a number, an identity, a place in the market. I wanted to be a mind made of stardust. I mean, it was really, as a teacher, all my life, this is what I said in Hyderabad also, all my life I would have given my right arm for a student like Rohit. And what did our system do? We pushed him to his death. Now, what is happening is, there is then this one view of education which is being promoted. Education as a means to an end, and not education as an end, as an intrinsic value, an end in itself which results in the development of the human being who is being educated. The other thing is that there is a very dangerous notion of nationhood. And I find it very strange that the people who are pushing this idea of nationhood are the very political force that had absolutely no role to play in the freedom struggle. See, the freedom struggle was a combination of a whole variety of diverse opinions, from liberals to Gandhians to, they weren't Gandhians of course at that time, but you know what I mean, to communists, to radicals, to what was then called terrorists with great pride. You had a whole range of people who were part of the freedom struggle. But the one lot of people that were never part of the freedom struggle were the RSS and mainly the Hindu Mahasabha, although Savarkar played some role in this at an early phase. The moment he was arrested by the British and put into Andaman cellular jail, he immediately within 2 weeks started writing Mafinamas and was finally released on the condition that he would never again work against the British. And the British were very clear on this, their own documents make it clear. So now when this right-wing element begins to talk about nationhood, and we for the last 67 years or 68 years now have been living with a concept of nationalism which has grown out of our freedom struggle, grown out of the enormous ideological variety of that movement. So that everybody, even communists here, are nationalists. We are internationalists as well, but we are also nationalists. And no Gandhian will say that the communists are not nationalists. They may say that, you know, you believe in violence and we believe in non-violence. But who are the people that call communists and Gandhians and socialists and everybody anti-nationals? It is the very people who had no role to play in the national movement. And they are pushing to an idea of the nation which is not one of this great social fabric of inclusion. It is in fact an idea of the nation as something that excludes people. The RSS notion of nation excludes certain kinds of people. It includes first and foremost Muslims, excludes first and foremost Muslims. It excludes Marxists. It excludes radical Dalits. It excludes everybody who does not think that the world begins and ends with the Vedanta and with the RSS Shakha. Straight from the sublime to the ludicrous. Because the Vedanta, for all there's the caste problems, there are all kinds of problems, but there is a reason, a rationality, a position which is being adopted, a position you can argue about, which you can disagree with. But what these people do is they use the words Veda. They use the word, the terms of Hinduism, which amazingly enough, it's very interesting. But I never heard the word Hindu being used before the 19th century and the British. They're the ones who really introduced this word. It was never used as a term for religion. It was used, it's an Arabic word, al-Hind, which means a geographical location. So that Muslims were Hindis, that is those who were born here, and so on. It was a geographical term. It's only after 1857 that the British began to use it as a religious term. And then you find these ideas developing in this way. Now, of course, we are told that only those for whom this is their Pitra Bhumi and their whatever other Bhumi, those who are born here and those whose ideology is from here, only they can be Hindus and only they can be true nationalists. Now, this is such a dangerous, meaningless concept of nationalism because it is so alien to the Indian psyche. It is so alien to all of us who have grown up. I mean, I am one of what Rushdie called Midnight's children. We grew up in independent India. And for us, Indian nationalism was a source of liberation. It always allowed room for dissent, for disagreement, but disagreement and dissent within a reasonable, rational frame of reference. And suddenly we find that nationalism is now something which is to be decided in dark alleys, in the home of Muhammad Akhlaq, in a bus from which Muslims are pulled down, in an institution where Dalit student organizations are to be called anti-national, in a place where Kanhaiya is to be called anti-national, in a place where, because Rohit's death exposed to public view his caliber as a human being, now suddenly people are talking about, oh, you see, Rohit wasn't really a Dalit. He's an OBC. As though a dead OBC is worth less than a dead Dalit. Nobody is looking at how the institutional framework was used and manipulated by the political forces of so-called nationalism today. These people are reducing nationalism to the state. They are not looking at the nation. They are not looking at the people. That is not nationalism. What is nationalism is those who catch you in the dead of night by yourself and tell you, look, we will beat the hell out of you. Look what was done on February 23rd to a police officer, an assistant sub-inspector. Yusuf was his name. And he was beaten up, made to carry a Bhagwa Dhwaj and say Jai Shankar, Jai Hind. And he was told, now you can live in this country. If they are doing this with the police, can you imagine what is going to be done and what is being done already with vulnerable people, whether Muslims or Dalits or backward castes, anyone who is caught in a situation where these thugs can have an opportunity to impose their definition of nationhood on these people or not. So this exclusion of certain people from the nation goes hand in hand with stormtrooper methods of functioning. In fact, I think if anyone has read Hitler and the history of the Nazi Party, I think it is our current nationalists. Somebody said, I can't remember who, but it was one of the professors in the JNU nationalism lecture series. Somebody said there are only 25 nationalists left in this country now. One is Modi, the other is Amit Shah, the third is Smriti Irani, and the 22 others are the lawyers who beat up the students in the Supreme Court. In that case, I think one is proud to be anti-national if this is nationalism.